There were even some scenes where I felt like, I don't know, it just didn't make sense. There was a time where Cooper drives through his cornfield, destroying hundreds of crops, chasing this drone, kind of putting his two kids in danger, like letting them take the wheel, and like the whole scene, I was like, he can't even see what's in front of him. Like, okay, we get it, he's kind of obsessed with flying things, but like, did he really have to put his kid's life in danger and also destroy like crops while there's people like low-key starving? Today's drawing is of that guy who left his kids in a dying civilization while he went and chased his dream to be cool spaceman. Today we are talking about Cooper from, you guessed it, Interstellar. And if you're anything like me, you have been saying Interstellar has been your favorite movie for as long as you can remember, so long that you kind of forgot what the movie was low-key about. Hey, I'm Frizzy, and this is my third video of the series where I talk about something you're actually interested in, so that way you get to see my art. So if you want to hear about the 2014, yes, I said 2014 hit, Interstellar, well, you maybe took a little look-see at my art over here, then keep on watching. And don't forget to subscribe, because this could be the last time that you see me. Quick spoiler warning, I am going to be talking about the movie and things that happen in the movie. So if you haven't seen Interstellar yet, first off, second off, you're cooked. Because Interstellar is a culture-shifting film. You know what? If you haven't seen the movie yet, you should probably just watch this video so that way at least you can pretend that you've seen the movie, because while you have been stuck in pre-2014, all of us have been questioning time, space, reality, being all dissociative, not knowing who we are in this reality and the world and what we know it and time and and don't you want that? I spent a lot of time on the sketch of this drawing. I wanted to make sure that I mapped out all of the details, because I have made some mistakes in the past in my later videos where I don't map out certain wrinkles in certain spots. I think I overdid it though. So maybe next time we'll shoot for a little bit of medium. One thing that I did really try and attempt to do with this drawing is try to cut the illustration short. Typically, I spent about 5 to 6 hours on a drawing. One of my goals was to cut down the time as much as possible. And one way I did it was I worked on my brushes. So I created 5 or so set brushes that had the texture that I wanted, and I went for a little bit more of an unfinished sort of look. My whole life I've been working on oil and acrylic on canvas, and so although I have been on Procreate for a few years, I do think that I'm still learning, and I'm still learning how to use the Apple Pencil that I use, and I played around with it. There was like a few hours where I was just experimenting with some other portrait and experimenting with the different brushes, and I think it helped out a lot. I wasn't lying when I said I considered Interstellar my favorite movie. It came up in so many first dates, so many classroom icebreakers, like, what's your favorite movie?
Oh, Interstellar. I'm not like other girls. I'm like really deep and like mysterious and like kind of smart.
But in all seriousness, Interstellar made me cry, made me laugh, made me scared, and did the thing that you have to do in order to be a good movie. Gave me
Crippling dissociation.
This movie came out in 2014, and I was a literal teenager at that time. And it didn't help that I was going through an ego death and questioning my reality. But I have to give this movie credit because it sparked my fascination and casual dive into theoretical physics, all things space, time, and mysterious. All of that said, I do have some critiques. And Rotten Tomatoes gave Interstellar a 73%, and I would have to argue that is actually a pretty accurate rating. After watching Interstellar in the ripe year of 2026, this movie is far from perfect. So to give you some background, this movie started in 2006 as a film treatment. And if you don't know what that is, that's okay because I didn't either. So a film treatment is kind of like a little roadmap. It's usually around maybe under 30 pages or so, and it just gives you like general characters, general plot, and just kind of tells the storyline as simple as possible. Interstellar's film treatment was actually only 8 pages long, which is crazy because I am fighting for my life trying to make this video under 30 minutes. The original idea was actually created by a theoretical physicist, Kip Thorne, and a film producer, Lynda Obst. The concept of the film was actually presented to, you guessed it, Steven Spielberg. You know, the guy who made E.T., made Jurassic Park, even 2026 Disclosure Day, and like every other sci-fi movie that you can think of. But he actually dropped it. And eventually, the filmmaking brother duo, Christopher and Jonathan Nolan, actually picked it up. I would like to imagine what Interstellar would be like if Steven Spielberg made the film. Considering the things he's made recently, I would have to fear that it would kind of give off movie slaps. Can I say that?
Wait, what?
I don't know, because what made Interstellar so good was that it didn't, at the time, didn't come off as movie slap. It kind of felt unique, it felt different, it felt so impactful and so serious and so real. Which, it is a good thing that the movie turned out good because it had a budget of $165 million. So imagine if the movie flopped. That would be a big, big loss. The budget was well utilized, making many, many physical sets, including a huge cornfield and actual spaceships. And even the famous fifth dimension scene where Cooper communicates to his daughter through a bookshelf in the fifth dimension. It is a crazy thing to think of what that set would look like, but they actually did that so that they could physically move the camera throughout space. More proof for me that any movie that relies heavily on physical sets rather than CGI is unimaginably better. When I rewatched Interstellar over this last weekend, I kind of had a little bit of an identity crisis because I've been calling this movie my favorite movie and I kind of forgot the cast. Am I the only one who forgot Anne Hathaway and Timothée Chalamet were in this movie? I mean, we can't forget Matthew McConaughey was in this movie because Cooper is Matthew McConaughey and Matthew McConaughey is Cooper and they're like the same person. But I feel like Anne Hathaway disappeared in her role and Timothée Chalamet was just a kid at the time and now he's seen as everybody's celebrity crush who hates ballet. So to refresh your memory about the plot a little bit, Cooper lives on a farm with his 2 kids, Tom and Murphy, and he also lives there with his father-in-law, Donald. This movie is a whopping 169 minutes. So there's a lot that goes into this story, but the beginning starts off fairly simple. Cooper is a recently widowed father, and the 4 of them live on a farm in a seemingly happy-ish life. We don't really know too much about the society, we just kind of get sneak peeks. What we do know is that their life looks fairly similar to ours today. It is a typical American society, kind of in a alternate dimension world, except the crops are slowly dying from a blight, and every once in a while a massive dust storm whips through the town that they live in, wreaking havoc on everything. The movie kind of gives us a brief background on the society through a meeting Cooper has with his children's principal. We learn that farming is basically one of the only career choices that his son has. Despite him being a fairly good student, he is early on in his life disqualified from even being able to apply to college, which kind of gives you an idea on how bad resources are. Upon rewatching Interstellar, there were definitely a few things that stood out to me that I didn't notice the first time. We kind of don't get a ton of world building, and we're a little bit forced to accept and understand the world they live in before we even really get a chance to live in it. So a lot of the context that you get is just through some small conversations and little scenes, and honestly, a lot of it didn't click for me. In the meeting where Cooper meets his kid's principal, he walks into a fairly good-looking room with well-dressed individuals. They don't look like they're starving, they don't look ill, but we're supposed to believe that the society around them is crumbling to the point where crops are scarce, people aren't eating, and there aren't any more careers or military. I mean, I understand what the movie was trying to tell me, but I didn't necessarily believe it, if that makes sense. There were even some scenes where I felt like, I don't know, it just didn't make sense. There was a time where Cooper drives through his cornfield, destroying hundreds of crops, chasing this drone, kind of putting his two kids in danger, like letting them take the wheel, and like the whole scene, I was like, he can't even see what's in front of him. Like, okay, we get it, he's kind of obsessed with flying things, but like, did he really have to put his kid's life in danger and also destroy like crops while there's people like low-key starving? I don't know, it just didn't make sense. None of these things, I would say, ruined the movie for me, but after watching it a second time, I definitely was like, this world feels a little less real than I remember. Enough of me complaining. One thing I did love was the character Murphy. She has a really good, strong personality, I would say, in the movie. Like, I felt like I could know her in real life. She has a lot of her dad's traits. She's strong-willed. She adores her dad, of course, and she's very charismatic in a sense, and I really liked her character. In this world, NASA is no longer existing, and everyone believes that the moon landings were faked. And she actually gets in a fight because she obviously believes in her father's previous career as a space explorer. She fights with one of her peers because they are saying that her father is basically faking his entire history. And I really liked this scene. I really wish they explored a little bit more about this whole idea of NASA and the fake moon landing and society just, I don't know, I wish I was in that classroom. But what really makes Murphy's character super cool in this movie is her supposed encounters with the ghost in her room. Watching the movie a second time, the twist didn't have so much sparkle, so much magic, but I still really liked it. Even knowing that the ghosts were his father the second time around watching it, I still felt like it was such a good plot twist, and they did put a lot of work to making you think it was something else until you finally understood. So one of the first scenes that we get in the progression of the plot is Cooper having an encounter with the ghosts. He had been hearing about the ghosts for years by his daughter Murphy, but it wasn't until a huge dust storm blew through their town and Murphy forgot to close her window. That ended up in Cooper seeing the dust settle in her room right by the bookshelf, settle into a strange pattern. Eventually, Cooper finds out that these weird patterns ended up being coordinates. And so very quickly, Cooper and his daughter eventually go and seek these coordinates out. And when they arrive, they find themselves in a secret NASA base. And this is where we see some introductions to some new characters. This is where Cooper is reunited with Professor Brand, somebody that he has worked with very closely in his previous days as a cool spaceman, and he is introduced to Brand's daughter. Okay, maybe I'm being a little bit nitpicky. This movie did come out in 2014, but all of a sudden when he's there, they start telling Cooper their cool secret plan to save the world. They start spilling the beans immediately. Humanity has less time than they thought. They discovered a cool new wormhole leading to another space system, star system, and they are trying to find a new habitable planet before time runs out on Earth. And then, almost immediately, they ask Cooper to pilot the ship on the secret mission. Yeah, no training montage, no testing, no psychological evaluation, just, yeah, you're the best pilot I know, Coop. Huh? Like, he was just like a few hours away. You could have knocked on his door and said, hey, like, you wanna like work with us? Maybe like a year ago? I don't know. This definitely lost me. To be fair, I do not envy the writers here. They had to be very quick, explain a lot of really complex things while making it seem possible that Cooper already understood a lot of it, and that definitely seemed like a hard thing to do. I wanted to go with a color choice that represented me. I like pink. I don't know if you can tell. I like purple. I like girly colors. I like cutesy. And Interstellar is not really that, but I wanted it to represent me. And so I chose pink and purple for the color, and I wanted it to look kind of like, I don't know, I wanted it to look very, very science fiction, very like maybe he's in a black hole, maybe time and space is warping around him, and I think that I did an okay job with that. But that was just kind of my general concept of the art itself of what I wanted to do. And I put him in the suit because I wanted to challenge myself. I don't usually draw a lot of things outside of somebody's face. And so I'm always looking for ways to challenge myself and push the boundaries of what I can do. For the most part, this illustration was a fairly easy one to do. Matthew McConaughey has very strong features, and it was pretty easy to make it look like him. I didn't have to worry too much about where I placed certain things, and it was just a really fun illustration to do in general. I think the hardest part of the illustration was guessing where those colors bounce off, because I don't usually like to just create a illustration off of my reference. I like to add different colors to it, and so I'm always guessing, okay, well, if the purple light's here, if the pink light's here, where is it? Where are they meeting? Where blah, 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 blue. But yeah, I think that was the more challenging part. But other than that, I think that it was fairly fast. I think this illustration lasted about 3 or 4 hours, so I did cut it a little bit more. I am trying to get it down to about 3 hours, so hopefully I get to do that in the future. Another thing that I found really fascinating was everybody in this movie all had a sense that, or I would say maybe a belief that fifth dimensional, higher dimensional creatures existed and were actually the ones who led Cooper to the NASA base and the ones who opened the wormhole in the first place to give access to the other star system where there were habitable planets. It was interesting, but I think this was the writer's way of secretly nudging you towards an alternative belief, so that way when the plot twist came, you were really shocked. They kept using words like they, the creatures, or them. They would say like, oh, it's them, you know? And so that really made you not think what was gonna happen. When Cooper decides to leave for the mission, obviously Murphy is upset because she feels partially responsible because it was quote unquote her ghost that led them to the NASA base in the first place. Cooper does not do a great job at explaining himself or, I don't know, giving her much time to process anything. Looking back, I definitely think Cooper was a big old stinky butthole for this because he doesn't really explain anything to her. He doesn't even give her a timeline as to when he's gonna be back. He's all cryptic and what he says to her. She is reasonably upset, and I think that the writers did do this on purpose. They kind of made it a bad decision, and the way he handled it bad. So that way later on he does feel super regretful, and it all makes sense. I still feel like I wish there was just a little bit more time where they discover the mission and Cooper leaves. I feel like a few scenes in between where Murphy is processing it, or even if they had Cooper working at the NASA base at the beginning, I don't know, maybe that's a little bit too far off, but I just feel like if there was a little bit more time in between, I think it could build a little bit more grounding, if that makes sense. And also it would have made the devastation later on when Cooper realizes he lost all his time with his daughter even more devastating, that he made that decision when there were moments of him going back and forth. But it really is just him being like, yeah, I'm going. Like, he's just like, yeah, right, I know, like, I'm your only living, like, parent left, but, like, I gotta go be up in space and, like, be flying and, like, cool stuff, like, you know. And I guess he is trying to save the world. I don't know. These are all my opinions. Before you know it, Cooper is piloting the spaceship through the wormhole, and we meet the new crew members, one in which is Brand, and she kind of is the most important. She's kind of like a secondary main character, if you will. And then there's the other crew members, including Dole, which we hardly get to know before he... And then there's Romilly, which is like the smarty fartsy sweet guy. And of course, we have Tars, which is a programmable robot and ended up being one of the funniest characters in the movie. The moment that they enter the wormhole is really the moment that it turns from grounded science theories to theoretical physics. While they're going through it, the spaceship gets a little bit distorted where Brand is sitting, and she reaches out to that distortion and she calls it humanity's first handshake. This scene is one of the best scenes, I think, in the movie, because there's a lot of foreshadowing, and it's just a really cool scene. So when they arrive on the other side of the wormhole, they are in a completely different star system, and they have to visit 3 different possible planets that they can start humanity on, or potentially become humanity's new home. Now, this is where I got a little lost, because it was almost like they were suddenly deciding where to go. You would think that they would have a little, I don't know, like a mission plan or an itinerary, or you know what, a color-coded spreadsheet or something, but they literally just went through the wormhole and was like, okay, we could go here, or like maybe like we'll go here. And I was just like, huh? They didn't think about this before? Nonetheless, they end up deciding to visit Miller's planet. Sweetheart Romilly decides to stay behind in the spaceship. He wanted to stay behind because I guess he had some unfinished research that he wanted to do. He knew that he was going to be there for a while, and it sounded like a pretty sweet deal, at least at first. But once Brand, Cooper, and Dole land on the Miller's planet, things start going fairly bad fairly quickly. The planet is a thin, shallow ocean, the entirety of it, and it's right next to a black hole, which turns out makes time go by extremely, extremely fast. So they have to be in and out of there. Very shortly after they arrive, they discover the astronauts that were sent there before them actually didn't have much time exploring it, and they were very quickly killed because this planet happens to have giant waves that run through the shallow ocean. And at first, they just thought it was a mountain in the distance until they quickly realized they were going to die in about 1 minute. Fun fact, I thought this was a cool little detail, but the little quiet ticking that you hear during this scene, which is about every 1.25 seconds or so, represents 1 day that goes by on Earth, which makes this scene just that more anxiety inducing. And as Brand, Dole, and Cooper are rushing back to their spaceship, Dole unfortunately doesn't make it, and his life is quickly ended on impact. And they brace for this wave to take their sealed spaceship on a little water park ride. This unfortunately waterlogs something. I don't really know the science behind it, but something happens and they need to wait to drain the ship. By the time they make their escape, 23 years passed. Which is crazy because Romilly had been chilling on this spaceship that whole time. He could have went into a hydropod to make that time go by faster, but he didn't know if he was gonna survive or if they were ever gonna rescue him. So he decided to just live out his life and focus his time on his research. But that's actually not even the saddest part, because when Cooper sits down and receives the messages from his family members on Earth, he has to come to terms with the fact that he just lost all his time with his kids. His little boy is now a full-grown adult with a family. His father has died, and his little daughter, Murphy, she is now an adult and still upset with him. Matthew McConaughey absolutely destroys the scene. When he sits down, there is hardly any dialogue, but it's so emotional. You can see him just like trying to enjoy and soak up every minute of these videos. He has to come to the terms with the fact that he can't do anything to get that time back. This was the moment where Interstellar won me over again. Like, before this, time is just a concept. It's just there in the background and you don't really think about it. But now it hurts. Now it's the secret villain of Cooper's life. They have lost over 2 decades of their life. One of their crew members is gone and they only have 2 more planets to explore. Luckily though, one of these planets is owned by the greatest astronaut of all time, Matt Damon. Huh? I completely forgot he was even in this movie until I saw his face. And once I saw his face, I was like, this guy's not good. I remember this guy is not good. Imagine being in the theater in 2014 and you're just trying to wrap your head around like time and space and the concept of reality. And then all of a sudden you're watching Good Will Hunting. I don't know. It threw me off. The crew wakes up Matt Damon, or his name in the movie is Dr. Mann, but maybe I'll refer to him as Matt Damon because he's just Matt Damon. But he is woken up from cryo sleep and he is incredibly grateful. And for a little bit of time, things aren't seeming too bad. At least they're not being chased by a giant tsunami in this planet. Unfortunately, that feeling doesn't last very long because apparently Dr. Mann fakes his data. He lied. At some point in his time on this planet, as the last one alive, he realized that he was going to have to lie and send out a signal that his planet was habitable, otherwise he would not be rescued and he would die alone. Knowing every day that nobody was going to come to save him, he had to choose die alone or risk humanity. And he chose risking humanity. And as much as I poked fun at Matt Damon being the character or the actor for this character, the character arc is actually fairly top tier. It hooked me in. He's not like a nasty guy. He's not like a super evil guy. He's just somebody who got really, really desperate, really, really scared, really isolated. It almost asks the audience a question of, if you were in that situation, would you may have done the same thing? But then of course, he takes it too far and he lures Cooper into isolation to try to kill him. Yeah. And this scene is incredibly weird because the whole time that Matt Damon is killing Matthew McConaughey, he's just like sitting there apologizing, like talking him through his death. And to be fair, if I was a killer and a villain, I might be apologizing to the people that I kill too, But the way he did it was super strange. Let's just say super strange. Now, of course, Dr. Mann fails to kill Cooper, but not in time to warn Romilly that Dr. Mann is a crazy, psycho, lunatic killer. So, unfortunately and sadly, the guy who risked and sacrificed 23 years of his life for data on this spaceship sadly dies in an explosion because he trusted somebody who was not needing to be trusted. And this part was kind of blown off in the plot, but it was kind of sad. With Mann still on the loose, he didn't kill Cooper, but he fled. Despite Cooper's advice to not try to dock the Endurance himself, he does try anyway, and the Endurance explodes and kills him. The airlock explodes, I guess you could say. After years of waiting and deceiving for survival, ironically, the thing that kills him is his attempt to survive. Unfortunately for Cooper and Bran, the failing attempt to dock the Endurance sends the Endurance spinning in a circle, and somehow Cooper manages to dock it while it's spinning in one of the coolest scenes in the entire movie. It was just a really cool scene, and I think Christopher Nolan was just showing off with his big budget at this point, but it was super cool. Another fun fact, the Endurance was created like a clock with 12 faces. And I know I was super nitpicky about this movie in the beginning, but geez, they just put so much cool detail and so many different little Easter eggs, and I just love it. Somehow, after Cooper manages to save the Endurance, they have a lot of catching up to do with their family. Time has passed, not as much as their last planet visit, but time still did pass. Murphy is all grown up, and she actually decided to work with Professor Brand to try to solve the equation, the gravitational equation that will save humanity. Then comes one of the biggest gut punches in the entire movie. Apparently, Dr. Brand never planned on even saving humanity in the first place. He never believed the equation could be solved, and he was sending Cooper and Brand to start humanity elsewhere. Plan B was always the plan. The whole mission was never ever to save humanity. And that means Cooper left his family to essentially die and fend for themselves so that way he could start humanity somewhere else. It's such a complicated lie because without it, Cooper never would have left. But because of it, Murphy lives her entire life thinking that her dad just left her for dead. Making the space suit itself was a little bit of a challenge because it's just not something that I'm used to. I think the hardest part was getting all of the lines to be straight and making it look like a medal because like I said, I only work really with faces. I've always drawn faces, I've always had faces in my drawing, and so I'm fairly good at, how an eye and a nose and a lip is gonna interact, although his lips were a little bit hard for me. But anyway, the spacesuit was fairly difficult, but I think that once I got the hang of it, it was pretty easy to finish. Matthew McConaughey's features were easy to do. I don't really have much to say too much about. I was just kind of in autopilot when I was drawing. The eyes were probably the funnest part. They went by pretty easy. And the nose, I think, was a little bit tricky. The way that the light was on the nose specifically was kind of hard because the light, it's a very subtle, I don't know how to explain it, but the edge of the nose and the cheek were so subtle in color difference, even though he has such a strong, bold nose, right? But in the reference photo that I used, it was just like one little thin line that was deciphering it from the cheek. And so making sure that that worked out was probably one of the trickier parts of his face. And his lips, I honestly feel like his lips aren't as As great as I would want them to look, they were a little bit tricky, but I was trying not to rework the art too much. I was trying to keep it loose, trying to keep it unfinished, if that makes sense, so that way it has that unfinished look to it, because sometimes I overwork my art, and so that's something that I'm trying to do better at. After realizing all of this, they are still stranded in space and they have to figure out what they're going to do next. Unfortunately, they realize that one of them has to actually sacrifice themselves if they want to make it to the third planet. Otherwise, they just won't have enough fuel. Of course, Cooper volunteers himself and shoots himself into the black hole and sends Bran to the third planet without even asking her. Which, I don't know, maybe ask her first or talk about it. His communication is not very good. It is not very good at all. Like, I get it. He's trying to save humanity and everything, but like, I don't know, communicate a little bit. Jesus, Cooper. Bran's basically left with, congratulations, you're about to start humanity and a civilization on another planet completely by yourself. I can only imagine raising all of those frozen embryos like the 1000 baby challenge in Sims. Meanwhile, Cooper and Tars are floating through space, getting launched into the black hole, and he seemingly thinks he is just going to die. But he wakes up in one of the coolest scenes I think I have ever seen in any movie. He lands in a tesseract, a fifth dimensional space where everything and anything exists all at once, except he can move through it and physically exist and see it all. Every bookshelf, every bedroom, every conversation is suddenly stacked in a comprehensible space for Cooper to experience. Suddenly, all the weird things that Murphy and Cooper were experiencing in the beginning of the movie start making a lot of sense. The ghost that Murphy kept referring to was never a ghost. It was Cooper. And in the beginning, the entire ending is just hidden in plain sight. The books falling off the shelf, the coordinates, even the watch that he left Murphy, all was him. I still remember the moment when I first watched this movie and realized that the ghost was Cooper, and I think that was the moment I realized that Interstellar was my favorite movie. In the end, this movie is really just about a father and a daughter and a complicated relationship. The Tesseract, the spaceship, the apocalypse, it's all just background. Next we see Murphy look at her watch that her father gave her before he left, and the second hand is moving in Morse code, and suddenly she realizes that the watch that she has been carrying with her has been holding the data she needed to solve the equation. So fast forward, Murphy finally solves the equation, she saves humanity, and eventually Cooper does get to see Murphy one last time. The second the scene started, I was like, no, I'm not gonna cry, it's not gonna happen. Even thinking about it, I'm like, I'm not gonna cry. I literally had to get mad, like, no. This made me cry the first time, it's not gonna make me cry the second time. There's just something about this ending that is just so bittersweet. They finally get to see each other again. Cooper, time has barely passed for him, but Murphy, she is an old woman. She even had to put herself in a cryo chamber just to wait for a chance to see her father one last time. Whew! But the sweetest thing is that Murphy didn't need her father anymore. And she felt like he was with her the whole time. She didn't know if he was alive or what had happened to him, but she lived her life in a way Cooper would be proud of. She had children, she created a family, she created a life, she created a whole society that Cooper is proud of. And it's just, I love good endings. And Interstellar has a really, really good ending. As for Tom, honestly, The movie kind of leaves him behind. Maybe he did something stupid like talk bad about ballet and they were like, let's not put him in anymore. But Murphy and Cooper's story is finally complete. Now, the movie's last scene is Cooper getting on a spaceship, and instead of going to save humanity, he actually wants to go find Brand because he rudely left her alone. So, yeah, he better. That's my final opinion. Yeah, Cooper, go find her. She's like raising 1,000 babies and she doesn't know what's going on. Come on. I'm glad he did this. Otherwise, I would have been kind of upset. Whew. Yes. Now, if you haven't seen Interstellar in a while, I do encourage you to go see the movie again. It's not gonna ruin it for you. I was scared at the beginning that the movie was ruined, but it did what it needed to do, and it was just as glorious as I remember it, despite some plot holes at the beginning. The movie isn't perfect, and I think that for the time, it was definitely a unique, one-of-a-kind movie. To answer the question of why we'll never see a movie as good as Interstellar, I think it's because when we watched Interstellar, it was a unique, different experience at the time. Now we have so many incredible different films. We have so much versatility in movies, and we've explored so much sci-fi. And so Interstellar just doesn't hit the same now, but I think the plot is still so incredible. I think one of the more amazing things that Interstellar does is after you watch the movie, you're just not done thinking about it. You know, there's so much detail, there's so many different Easter eggs and scientific ideas that it really just, it changes you as a person. Not to sound dramatic, but it's a very, they're touching on huge, big, interesting concepts, mysteries of the reality that we live in, and they put it all in a movie. That is not an easy thing to do. But I think for the circumstances, I will say they did an excellent job. That is my final verdict. I think they did an amazing job. I don't think they did an amazing job because the plot was perfect, the writing was perfect, and the scientific theories were realistic even. I just think that they reached for something bigger. And in a world where Hollywood does so much, they stick to predictable success. They do so many remakes and so many, you know, with a budget that big, Interstellar was a risk. I really think it was a risky movie to make, and they reached for something really big, and it came out so incredible and really was just one of those movies that altered society and the culture that we live in. So yeah, this is the final results. I am fairly happy with it, and I'm glad that it didn't take me as long as it normally does. I'm gonna keep continuing to push myself out of my comfort zone and do different materials and backgrounds that I don't normally do. I think this is probably one of my favorite Procreate illustrations that I've done. I know that's kind of crazy to say, but like I said, I'm still new to digital illustration. Maybe one of these days I'll do a physical painting just to kind of get back to what I'm more used to. But for now, I am just trying to discover digital art a little bit more. I think that's a really cool illustration. Is it perfect? No. Am I ever gonna feel like I did a perfect job and absolutely love anything that I do? No. Like I said, I'm still growing, I'm still learning. And yeah, let me know if you guys liked it in the comments down below or who you want me to do next. Anyway, those are just some of my unnecessary opinions. I hope you like this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Bye. Bye. Bye.